What happens when Eternia's greatest source of power is mirrored by a blade built to drain it away? One very dangerous new weapon crashes into the world of He-Man and Skeletor. Hi friends, John, aka Shadow here, MOTU, a superfan. I just hit up my local comic shop to score the floppy of the final part of the Sword of Flaws arc in the new Masters of the Universe comic series from Dark Horse. If this new lore interests you by chance, make sure to smash the like button and please subscribe to the channel. We do appreciate it. Now, please keep in mind, there are spoilers ahead. But first, the idea of the two halves of the power sword is definitely not something new. In fact, not only is it present in the first mini-comics released alongside the original Masters of the Universe toy line from the 1980s, but the original vintage He-Man and Skeletor action figures came with a gray sword and a purple sword. And you could take the two halves of these swords, combine them together, and they connected to create one actual power sword. Now, Skeletor's original goal was to obtain both halves of the power sword so that he could use the sword's complete power and magic. The lore of the old, very early mini-comics tell of a tale of Skeletor basically trying to use the sword's magic to open a portal to another dimension so that he could bring in reinforcements to conquer Eternia. However, our good friend the sorceress has a better idea. She hides the two halves of the swords in Eternia's highest peak and beneath Eternia's hardest rock. Keep this in mind because many of these details find themselves newly woven into the origin and placement of the Sword of Flaws. So do you remember the old lore, and do you perhaps favor the original mini-comics over other He-Man media? I know the mini-comics, especially the early ones, have a very nice core group of fans. I'm more of a Filmation man myself, but Skeletor's sword with an actual real backstory and purpose could prove quite fascinating. And the idea of this purple power sword is the focal point of the Sword of Flaws storyline from writer Tim Seeley, who's no stranger to He-Man, and artist Freddie E. Williams II. So the story starts as after Skeletor causes a massive earthquake while using a newly reconstructed core breaker vehicle from the Great Wars. The peak of a mountain called Heaven Piercer opens up and reveals a violet-purple colored power sword. Notice it is hidden on perhaps the highest peak, but also beneath the hardest rock of the mountain. Excellent callback to the original mini-comics. Now, the Sorceress and Orko basically travel back into the past within Castle Grayskull to learn the origin of this sword. They find themselves as basically invisible observers in the times of Eternia. While they are inside Gray's tower, they witness Eldor's apprentice, Gray, using the Book of Living Spells to combine magic with technology to create a failsafe against the power of Grayskull. This basically becomes known as the Sword of Flaws. The Sword of Flaws is basically a weapon to balance the forces of magic and technology. However, after the Sorceress and Orko break through time to assist Gray in becoming Hero, the most powerful wizard in the universe, the might of this purple sword is actually revealed as King Hiss steals it away and strikes the Sorceress with it, basically causing the Sorceress's powers to fade and transporting herself and Orko back to the present. However, Hero defeats King Hiss with the Staff of Transformation by sending this Snake Man to the Void, and he proceeds to hide the Sword of Flaws in Heaven Piercer Mountain. We then witness the might of this sword back in present day, where Skeletor has actually obtained it. And unfortunately, during a vicious attack, he thrusts the sword directly into Battlecat, magically transforming Skeletor into an even more powerful being as the Sword of Flaws sucks the magic of Grayskull out of Battlecat. At the end of the story arc, Skeletor does still have possession of the Sword of Flaws, so I believe we have more mythos to come on that weapon. So what an awesome concept, having the opposite sword's task to basically siphon the power instead of obtaining the power. The Sword of Flaws adventure is actually quite good, with a solid backstory that finds foundation within the original MOTU mythos. I highly recommend checking out the entire story, where you can also learn more about Eternia and the council known as the Quadrant of Powers. So what are your thoughts on the expansion of lore for the purple power sword that comes with Skeletor's original 1980s action figure? Did you enjoy the comic, or do you now plan to read it because of this revelation? Issues 1 through 4 are still in print and available digitally from Dark Horse Comics. And a collected trade paperback will be released on July 14th, 2026. Now, my friends, live the journey by liking, subscribing, and clicking that notification bell. For every destination is but a doorway to another. Good journey.